I love my Nanna lots and lots. She's my second favorite person in the whole world, after Mum. Lots of kids in my class say they love their dad the most, but I don't know mine that well. He left when I was very little and I haven't seen him since. Nanna makes me feel better about things. She makes stuff okay. When I used to feel sad about Dad not being here, or whenever I was scared because people were shouting on our street late at night, Nanna would sit by my bed and comfort me. She had the same song she'd always sing, "Hush now my darling and never you fear. For you won't know danger as long as I'm near." Whenever I'm frightened I think of Nanna singing that song. I close my eyes and picture her leaning over me, her bright blue eyes shining with the light from my bedside lamp, her cheeks crinkling up as she smiles. Lately Nanna hasn't smiled so much. She hasn't been herself at all. She usually talks to me lots and lots, tells me stories, asks me questions about infant school, but lately she's been different. She hasn't said a word. It all started when Nanna got poorly. This was a couple of weeks ago. One day I got home from school and Nanna was in her usual chair in the lounge. The next day she wasn't. When I asked Mum where she was, she told me Nanna was sick. She was resting in bed, like I did when I had the flu last summer. Only when I had the flu I got better. I had an achy tum and a bad head for 2 days, and then I was okay again. It wasn't like that with Nanna. I kept asking Mum if I could see her, and she kept saying no. She kept telling me I couldn't go into Nanna's room. I thought Mum might be sick too, because she wasn't wearing makeup like she normally does. Her skin was pale and her eyes were all red. She wouldn't talk to me much either because she was always in the room with Nanna. Without Nanna in my room at night, I started feeling scared again. I found it hard to sleep. I tried to imagine her singing to me, but it wasn't the same. I could hear grown-ups shouting on the road outside our house, their voices loud and angry, and all I wanted was for someone to come and make me safe again. Then, about a week later, I got my wish. The first night I saw Nanna again was a bad one. I'd been lying in bed for hours, struggling to sleep. There were too many sounds outside the house, men calling to each other on the street, a woman laughing, big buses rumbling by. My best friend at school, Tom, says the road I live on is dodgy. I didn't know what that meant, and when I asked Tom he said he didn't know either. He told me it was just something he'd overheard his dad tell his mum. Said it was why his parents didn't like him coming over my house to play. I think dodgy must mean when stuff's really loud all the time. Like when it's so noisy you can't sleep. The night Nanna came back to see me I remember checking the Scooby-Doo clock that sits on my bedside table. Watching the time as it got later and later. 9:36 p.m. 10:18 p.m. 11:45 p.m. The sounds outside didn't stop. First there were all the people laughing and shouting, and then later there was something that sounded like a big van right below my window. The engine rumbled on and down like a snoring giant. There were other noises, too, inside the house. Sounds from upstairs that I couldn't quite place. I thought I heard Mum speaking at one point, like she was on the phone. Then later I thought I heard her crying. The outside sounds made it hard for me to hear clearly, though. The next time I looked at my Scooby clock it was after midnight. I must have gone to sleep for a bit then. I remember I had a bad dream. In the dream I was lying in bed, and I could hear footsteps coming up the staircase in our house. Creak, creak, creak. I tried calling for Mum, but my voice didn't work. I couldn't make a sound. Creak, creak, creak. The footsteps grew louder. Soon they sounded as though they were right outside my room. I tried screaming, tried to climb out of bed, but my body wasn't working. I couldn't move or speak. It was as my door was being pushed open that I woke up. Darkness surrounded me. I pulled in a deep breath. My heart was hammering in my chest and my room was almost pitch black. A faint crack of light crept in under the door, but that was it. I knew it must be much later now, because for once the road outside was quiet. Everything was silent. Well, not completely silent. Somewhere in the darkness of my room I could hear a faint rustling, a soft whooshing sound like the noise curtains make when it's windy. I checked the time on Scooby. 2:48 a.m. I yawned, still half asleep, and went to turn over. That's when I saw Nanna. She was standing in the shadows at the far end of my bed. I could just see her silhouette in the light from under my door. Nanna stood completely still, not moving a muscle, watching me. It was too dark for me to see her face, but I could tell that she was looking in my direction. She wore the same dress she'd been wearing the last time I saw her favorite one that's covered in blue flowers, and as I stared I could see it swishing slightly, like there was a breeze in the room. Only I couldn't feel one. Nanna. My voice was dry from sleep, and it came out all croaky. Nanna, what you doing? She didn't say anything. I reached a hand up to my face to rub the sleep from my eyes. When I opened them again, Nanna was gone. The next morning Mum told me Nanna had left. that she'd gone away in the night. Mum's eyes were red again and there were bags under them. Her voice kept breaking up when she spoke. I asked her where Nanna had gone. Someplace better, she replied. Was that why she was in my room last night? I asked. To say goodbye to me. Mum looked at me for a long time without saying anything. There was a frown on her face. Eventually she asked if I dreamed about Nanna. It wasn't a dream, I said. I was having a dream, but Nanna woke me up. She was in my room, watching me. She didn't say goodbye, though. Mum turned away from me so I couldn't see her face. This time she was silent for even longer. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded funny again. She'll always be watching over you, sweetheart. Mum gave my leg a squeeze. Your Nanna loves you. You know that, right? I wanted to ask why Nanna had gone away if she loved me. But Mum got up and left the room before I could. It didn't matter in the end, though. Because the next night, Nanna came back. Every night for a week, the same thing. Noises on the street outside. Checking my schoolboy clock. Laughter. Shouting. The same loud van, rumbling away below my bedroom window. Finally falling asleep. And then, Nanna, standing at the foot of my bed. Not talking, or saying anything when I spoke to her. Only watching. The one thing that changed, the only way I could tell the difference between one night and the next, was that Nanna kept getting closer. Steadily closer. Each time I saw her, she'd be a little bit nearer my bed. She didn't move when I was awake. It wasn't like that. Even when I asked her questions, she stayed perfectly still. But then the next night, when I woke up, she'd be that little bit nearer. It was like she was playing the statues game me and my friends sometimes play at school, the one where you have to creep towards someone without being spotted. After a few nights, Nanna got close enough for me to see her face. That's when I started getting scared. Up until then I'd looked forward to seeing her. Having her in my room made me feel better. But once she was close enough that the shadows no longer hid her, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. Her face had changed. Not in the way it looked or anything, but the difference was still obvious. She didn't smile. Nanna had always been happy to see me. Her blue eyes were always bright and her cheeks would crinkle when she looked at me. But when I saw her at night, they didn't. Her mouth was a straight line and her eyes just stared without blinking. The last time I saw Nanna was a few days ago. It makes me feel bad to think about it, but by then I almost didn't want to see her anymore. She scared me. I kept picturing her silent, unsmiling face, and every time I did my skin would prickle up. She kept getting closer, too. The night before she'd been near enough that I could have reached out and touched her if I wanted to. I didn't want to. I wanted the old Nanna back. The Nanna that used to sit by my bed, talking to me and singing the same song whenever it was time for me to sleep. Not this new Nanna who only stood and stared. It wasn't as if I could talk to Mum about it, either. I'd tried a couple of times but it didn't work. She only told me I was having nightmares. Then she said she'd talk to me properly about Nanna when the time was right. I didn't understand what she meant. There's a part of my brain that wonders if Mum's right. If maybe I was just having nightmares. Bad dreams caused by me struggling to sleep and worrying about Nanna being poorly. Even now, I wonder if that might be it. If maybe the whole thing was just a nightmare. Because if it wasn't, I don't know how to explain what happened the last time Nanna came into my room. The night started normally enough. I was lying awake in bed, listening to people yelling on the road outside. Watching the clock. The same as always. The first difference was the van. Each night I'd heard it rumbling below my window for at least an hour. It was one of the noises that made it really hard for me to get sleepy, but that night it wasn't there. There was no sign of it at all. This must have made me drift off a bit earlier, because the last time I looked at my clock it was only 10:26 p.m. A sound woke me up. A soft smash, like glass breaking in the distance. Then a dull click and a muffled crunch. As I came fully awake I realized there was a hand over my mouth. My eyes snapped open. Nanna. She was standing by the head of the bed, her blue eyes staring down at me. Her left hand was clasped over the lower half of my face. It felt cold. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Nanna raised her other hand and pressed a single finger to her lips. I looked back at her in terror. My heart was beating so hard it felt like a fist in my chest. As I stared at Nanna, she shook her head from side to side. Slowly. Then she removed the finger from her mouth. Far off in the house, I heard more noises. Soft thuds. They sounded like muffled footsteps. Keeping her freezing hand on my face, Nanna leaned down so that her mouth was right beside my ear. I lay completely still. The terror was so bad I couldn't move. And then, after a second, I heard it. Hush now, my darling, and never you fear. It didn't feel like Nanna was singing the words to me. Not exactly. I know this sounds strange, but I could just sort of hear them. In my mind. like the song was playing in my head. The sound of it was gentle and soothing, and I immediately felt a little less frightened. For you won't know danger as long as I'm near. The words played in my head, over and over. I felt my eyes drift shut. The lids suddenly felt heavy, like they were being weighed down. Far off in the house, the noises continued. Creaks and thumps. They were getting closer. The soft pad of footsteps moving up the stairs. But the funny thing was, even though the sounds were drawing nearer, they were also getting fainter. It was like the volume was being turned down. My head was filled with Nanna's song, and the words covered everything. They stopped me feeling scared, only sleepy. Like that feeling you get when you lower yourself into a warm bath. Safe. I only opened my eyes once more after that. Just once. Only a crack. Because even though the volume had been lowered on the house sounds, I still heard it when my bedroom door was opened. The sound was so close not even Nanna's song could cover it. My eyes drifted open, expecting to see Mum. But it wasn't her. The person standing in the doorway was a large man in a black t-shirt. He had a wide, pudgy face and small eyes. In his right hand he held something long and shiny. The man's eyes looked around the room and fell on me, and then they moved to Nanna. His face changed. He'd been smiling before, sort of grinning, but now his eyes were wide with terror. His mouth hung open. I followed his gaze and looked up at Nanna, and I saw why the man was so scared. Nanna was screaming at him. At least, she looked like she was screaming. Her mouth was wide open, but I couldn't hear any sound coming from it. Her grey hair streamed out behind her head. Her blue eyes blazed. Up until then I'd never seen my Nanna angry about anything. It's something I hope I'll never have to see again. In my head, Nanna's song played on. The words washed over me like warm water. I felt sleepier than I had in a long time. My eyes flicked back to the strange man once more. The last thing I saw before my eyes drifted shut was that he'd fallen to his knees, and he was covering his ears with both hands. I hadn't seen Nanna since that night. Not once. I'd woken up a few times at around 2 a.m, and every time I do I stare hard at the shadows in my room. But she's not there anymore. Mum still hasn't spoken to me about her, either. She hasn't told me where Nanna's gone. I keep trying to ask her, but over the last few days she's been very busy. The day after the strange man came into my room, there were lots of other people that came to our house. Way more than normally visit. Some of them were policemen. They had uniforms on, and they smiled and asked me lots of questions. I told them all about what happened in the night. They didn't seem too interested in the stuff about Nanna, but they wanted to know lots about the strange man. They kept asking me to tell them what he looked like. Describe his face again and again. After the police had gone, a man came round to fix one of our downstairs windows, which had got smashed in the night. And after that lots of Mum's friends came over to visit. At one point, when Mum was busy chatting in the lounge, I snuck off to Nanna's room. I hadn't been in there for a long time. I don't know what I expected, but I was still a bit sad when I saw Nanna's bed was empty. She really had gone away, after all. The room still smelled of her, though. Of the perfume she always wore. And when I shut my eyes and breathed the smell in, I could still remember the sound of her song. I could hear it in my mind. I think about that song a lot now. Whenever I'm struggling to sleep, and whenever I wake up in the night, I think about it. It helps. I used to need Nanna to sing it to me, but now the words are enough to make a difference. I sing them in my head. I close my eyes and the sounds wash over me like warm water, again and again, and I can almost imagine Nanna is right there beside